Sangha program. This is our Srimad Bhagavatam program where we read prayers of pure devotees. The current theme of in these prayers is prayers of King Chitraketu. These are very beautiful prayers from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 18, from verse 34 to 48. Today we have a very wonderful devotee, Prachi Mataji, who will be presenting the story, the verses, and her realizations. Hare Krishna, Prachi Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much. And first, I would like to thank Satyasara Prabhu, Jaya Subhadra Mataji, Veena Mataji, Prashant Prabhu, everyone for giving me this opportunity to learn and able to purify myself by this understanding and learning. So thank you so much. I would. So these are the prayers of King Chitraketu from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 16, verses 34 to 48. In the interest of time, I would be able to share a few verses, a realization. First, let's start uh, with prayers. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुर्वे नमः नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् शृण्वतां स्वकतः कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तना हृदये अन्तःस्थो हि अभद्राणि विद्युनोति सुहृत्सताम् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमा श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय. So before starting to the prayers, I would like to discuss about the background story from where how come these prayers are mentioned in the Bhagavatam. So this story uh, starts from actually sixth canto, 12th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Sukdev Goswami was describing Parikshit Maharaj about Vrittasur's glorious death. And this Vrittasur was a demon who was killed by Indradev. And when Vittasur died, all the demigods present there, they looked that a living spark came from Vrittasur's body and it returned back to Godhead. Like Vittasur entered the transcendental world to become an associate of Lord Shri Sankarshana. So since it is very, very rare, like to become a pure devotee, and so when Parikshit Maharaj heard about this story, he got curious and he asked Sukdev Goswami Maharaj, like how such a demon as Vrittasur could become an exalted devotee. And from uh, there, then Sukdev Goswami, in this connection, he describes about the previous life of Vrittasur. So Vrittasur, in his previous life, he was the king of Shurasen, and his name was a Chitraketu. So despite of all the opulences in his kingdom, this king was full of anxiety always because he had no sons. So once he got an opportunity to meet the great sages like Angira, when Angira Muni came there, so he inquired from the king like about his welfare and how are you doing. So he could feel that king is not happy. So therefore, this merciful sage Angira, he performed a sacrifice and gave the remnants of the food offered in the yagna to the king's first wife, Krityadyuti. By the way, this king had millions of wives, and the yagna prasadam was given to Krityadyuti, which was the head queen or the first wife. So Krityadyuti became pregnant, and in due course, she gave birth to a son, and upon the birth of his son, obviously, this king and all the residents of the palace were like super happy, and the affection of Chitraketu increased towards his son and Krityadyuti over the period, and he lost all the affection for his other wives who had no sons. So the other wives, the co-wives of Krityadyuti, they got very envious. It's like a human nature, right? Which when we do not have something which others have, and so it's jealousy, envy, all those anarthas are very, very common in all the being in the human. So they got envious and they lost all their intelligence. And later, they gave poison to the child. It becomes it means all that envy. It got into that point where they could not even bear that a small child, they could not even think that what is right and what is wrong. They lost all their intelligence and they poisoned the child. And when Chitraketu Maharaj he came to know about his son's death, he was overwhelmed with shock. He started crying loudly and along with his wife. So King Chitraketu was greatly aggrieved and he was almost like dead in an ocean of lamentation. Right when then Narad Muni and Angira, sage Angira, they went to see him. These great saints Angira and Narad, they explained that the relationship between father and son is not factual. Why are you lamenting, right? It is simply a representation of the illusory energy. But being in that state of sorrow means no words of wisdom could be easily adapted by our mind. So they instructed the king in various ways and asked him to try to understand his real position, who you are, whether mind, whether you are body, whether you are soul. But nothing was helping. So Narad Muni, he thought of bringing the dead son back to life, the son of Chitraketu. He said, "O living entity, just see how your father and mother, all your friends and relatives are overwhelmed with grief because of your passing away." So, by mystic power, Narad Muni, the living entity, entered into the dead body of the Chitraketu's son, and for a short time, and spoke in reply to Narad Muni's request. He said, "According to the results of my fruitive activities, the living being, transmigrate from one body to another, sometimes going to the species of the demigods, sometimes to the species of lower animals, sometimes vegetables, human species, and so on. Therefore, in which birth were these my mother and father? So no one is actually my mother and father. So this is not the son talking. So it is mentioned that the living entity is talking, that I, the living being, right? Which is the soul. So no one is actually my mother and father. That is what the so-called son, the living entity in the body of that Chitketu's son was telling. Yeah. And he was like, how can I accept these two people as my parents? And he said many things explaining about the eternal nature of the living entity and how living entity, right, under the influence of external energy of the Lord, creates various bodies for himself according to like different desires. So after hearing all this from the soul who was in the body of the king's son, everyone got astonished and they gave up their lamentation. And king's wives who had poisoned the son, right, they were also very ashamed and they went to river Yamuna and atoned for their sins. They also gave up their ambition to bear the child, right? Means after hearing all this knowledge, Chitketu, he became well aware of the spiritual knowledge, and he bathed in the river Yamuna. He offered his respects to sage Angira and Narad Muni, and he fully surrendered to these sages. And when Narad Muni, seeing that he's totally surrendered, he became very, very happy, very pleased. And Narad Muni gave a mantra to King Chitraketu. Uh, and after 1 week of repeatedly practicing this mantra, like which was received from the Narad Muni, this Chitraketu, he achieved the rule of the planet of Vidyadhars as an intermediate product of his spiritual advancement. And then within a few days later, by the influence of this mantra, his mind became increasingly enlightened in his spiritual progress, and he attained shelter at the lotus feet of Anantev. So he reached the kingdom of Sheshnag, and he saw that he was like a white. I mean, Chitraketu saw that Anantadev, he was like white as the white fibers of lotus flower. He was dressed in bluish garments, and he was adorned with brilliantly glittering helmets, armlets, belts, bangles. His face was smiling, and his eyes were reddish. So you got totally astonished to see him, and he got choked. He could not speak anything, and after some time he just closed his eye. There were tears falling from his eyes, and with great devotion, he offered these prayers, which we are talking, which we are going to study today. So these quick takeaways from this story is like the so-called material blessings, like so all these material miseries are actually the blessings in disguise. The miseries like come to us that we can reestablish our lost relationship with the Lord. Means miseries in life are like the golden opportunities to purify ourselves and go back to Godhead. Pure devotees like Kunti Maharani, like they always wish that Krishna keeps giving her calamities again and again, so that she can see Krishna again and again. And because she knows very well that seeing Krishna again and again and being in the remembrance of the Krishna will can only help us to go back to Godhead, and will prevent from repeated births and deaths. So in this so with this, I think I will jump to the verses. Text 34. Uh, Ajit Chitraketuruvacha Ajita Jita Sama Matibhi साधुभिर्भवान् जितात्मभिर्भवता विजितास्ते अपि च भजताम् अकाम atmanam ya atmadoti karuna. Translation. Chitraketu said, "O unconquerable Lord, although you cannot be conquered by anyone, you are certainly conquered by devotees who have control of the mind and senses. They can keep you under their control because you are causelessly merciful to devotees who desire no material profit from you. Indeed, you give yourself to them, and because of this, you also have full control over your devotees." So, quick takeaways from this verse. Like this verse, Chitraketu Maharaj started prayers from this very verse, and in this very verse, he's describing the sweet relationship between the Lord and his pure devotees. He mentioned that Ajita Jitaha, like Lord, we all know that Lord is unconceivable, and at the same time he's saying Ajit, he's Ajit, he can be conquered, and Ajit, he cannot be conquered, and Ajita is like he can be conquered. So this is very it's very confusing to understand with our material senses. But we can take some examples from Srimad Bhagavatam, where many devotees have Lord has performed various pastimes with his devotees and showed how he's unconquerable and conquerable in the same time. So, first example from the means from the Prabhupada mentioned in the purport is the gopis, right? So we know that Krishna loved the gopis. Gopis of the Krishna, no one could remain without each other even for a single moment. Gopis, they would make Krishna dance. Just imagine means the universal Lord, right? He would dance on just for some battle. Means I remember this. There was this some doha from Ras Khan. Like it says like Shesh Ganesh Mahesh Dinesh Suresahu Jahi Nirantar Gave जाहि अनादि अनंत अखंड अच्छेद अभेद बतावें आद ए सुख व्यास रटें पची हारे तऊ पुनि पार न पावें ताही अहीर की छोहरियां छछिया भर छाछ पे नाच नचावें. Means like these ahir ki choriyan means these gopis, right? With for us just for a small buttermilk, they will make that Krishna dance, whose glory is Anantadev is singing, and he cannot still stop singing, and so there is some magic definitely. So basically, these are the examples which describe that Lord can be conquered by the devotees. Another example is Maya Yashoda, right? We hear every time in the Damodar month about this story where Mother Yashoda, she could bind the unlimited Lord Damodar with ropes, right? Why? Because of her pure love. So pure love, and she was falling like all the, like they say, like 2 inches every time she went. What is those 2 inches which is required to bind the Lord to a devotee is pure love and sincere endeavor, right? This is the only things which by which Lord gets can be bound, right? Although he's Anant, but again he's unconceivable, so we cannot understand him just with our material senses. Although also this verse talks about like conquered by devotees who have control of the mind and senses. So what is control of mind and senses, right? Um, so we are wandering into the cycle of birth and death, right? Don't know, like from millions and millions of years. And and because why it is so, from Bhagavatam and from the different purports of written by Prabhupada, we are able to understand that this is happening because of our desires, our foolish desires for sense gratification. Like the basic nature of the soul, we are not the body, we are not the body, we are the soul. And the basic, we don't have the understanding, we always forget, means even if we hear this statement, we read this statement, but literally we keep forgetting. At least I can speak for myself, we keep forgetting that, oh, this is not the case. The material world is designed in such a way, this we keep forgetting these things. So the basic nature of the soul is to always remain active, and it cannot be stopped even for a moment, right? So just controlling our desires and detaching from everything is not at all easy, right? Which we can see that it is not at all easy. However, since the nature of the soul is to remain always active, if we engage our soul in its original activity, what is that activity? Love for Krishna. If we engage our soul in the original activity of loving Krishna and surrendering unto his lotus feet by doing devotional services, like to please Krishna, and the why are we doing the devotional services? There should not be any motive, it should be unmotivated. Anya abhilat shita shudnyam, right? All this, when we are doing these, all the other taste for sense gratification, all those hankerings for the sense gratification will automatically diminish, right? And gradually we will be able, and gradually with our devotional service will stay uninterrupted because we have found a higher taste. So Krishna is anyways so attractive that one who has attained even the small speck of dust of Krishna's lotus feet, they have no room for any other desires. So in Nectar of Devotion, Srila Rupa Goswami mentioned, described about the six principles that are favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. It is text 3 from Nectar of Instruction. It says, उत्साह निश्चयात धैर्यात तत कर्म प्रवर्तनात् संग त्यागात सतो वृत्ते सद्भिर भक्ति प्रसीदयति. So these six principles he talks about. First is being enthusiastic. So we know that one, for even for material things, right, very small things, whether it's office, whether it's a student, if there is no enthusiasm, nothing can be attained, right? One cannot means the even to just even to simply as to cook a food, if there is no enthusiasm to cook the food get burnt, something will happen, nothing can be done, even a smallest thing. So what to speak about devotional service? So being enthusiastic is the first point that Srila Rupa Goswami has mentioned. Second is endeavoring with confidence. Third, being patient. Patience, because we chanted for, oh, I'm chanting for last 10 years, 50 years, or 20 years, or 1 year, but still I'm not feeling anything, and we stop there. Nothing, the journey will never be completed. So we have to be just patient, like we hear from all the acharyas, just be patient. It will happen, it will happen for sure. So just be patient. And fourth point mentioned is acting according to the regulative principles, like Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. Although fifth, abandoning the association of non-devotees. Six is following the footsteps of previous acharyas. So all these six principles are described, which can help us to execute the our devotional service and be able to conquer Krishna, although that is conquering Krishna is not the motive for the devotees. It's just having that sweet relationship, maintaining that sweet relationship for reciprocation. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela 19.151, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he mentioned that Brahmanand Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bija. So in the course of traversing the universal creation of Brahma, some fortunate soul may receive the seed of Bhakti Lata, right? The creeper of devotional service. This is all by the kripa of Guru and Krishna. It is not easy. So we have to be very surrendered to the our acharyas and gurus sincerely and following this footsteps. Then only we will be able to purify ourselves and advance in the devotional service. Next verse is verse 35. तब तब विभवा खलु भगवान जगद उदासया क्षिति लयादनि विश्वसृजसते मीमांस तत्र मृषास स्पर्धन्ति पृथग अभिमतया. Translation: My dear Lord, this cosmic manifestation and its creation, maintenance, and annihilation are all but your opulences. Since Lord Brahma and the other creators are nothing but small portions of a portion of you, their partial power to create does not make them God. Their consciousness of themselves as separate Lord is therefore merely false prestige. It is not valid. So in this verse and the next next verse 35, 36, 37, opulences and supremacy of the Lord is described by Chitraketu Maharaj. He said that Lord Brahma is described to be nothing in front of the Lord. So what to speak of us? We are like merely an infinitesimal particle. There is no comparison between us and the Lord's potency. So people in Kali Yuga who claim to be Lord, there's just mere foolishness, right? There is no comparison at all. Whatever we think we are doing are inspirations from the Lord. He only provides us the intelligence to create material things, right? But also he also provides the ingredients as well, right, required for the creation. For example, even for a simple prasadam cooking, like a rice prasadam, if we want to cook, all the rice, the water, the fire, the material that is the pots are made of, everything is provided by Krishna. How can we feel what is there to be proud of, right? So human creations, these are prone to errors. When we create, even when we are creating something things, we because of our imperfect senses, all these scientific advancements, modernizations of societies, these are actually creating disbalances. They are always like side effects, with sometimes pollutions, diseases, whatnot. However, this is not the case with the Lord's creation, right? He is always, he's perfect, and his creation is perfect. So there is also an example of there is a story like where one traveler, I will quickly go with the in the interest of time, like the traveler was traveling, and he happened to got tired, happened to take take rest under a big tree, and he slept there. And when he opened his eye, he was, after some time, he was feeling hungry. So he looked all around, and he saw there was a big tree, big bushy tree, very shady, and there were small berries. And he was like, what is this? How stupid it is! This such a big tree and small berries. Because he was hungry, so he was thinking like that. And all of a sudden, that berry fell on his head, and then he realized, oh no, I think I was wrong. Glad that means whatever the creator has created is for a reason. If this had been a big fruit, I would be dead at that time, right? So this is just a story, and there are tons of examples where we see like that there is no question of Lord's creation and anything, being okay. In the interest of time, I will just go with the translation and realizations for 36. You exist in the beginning, middle, and end of everything. From the most minute particle of the cosmic manifestation, the atom, to the gigantic universes and total material energy. Nonetheless, you are eternal, having no beginning, end, or middle. You are perceived to exist in these three phrases, and thus you are permanent. When the cosmic manifestation does not exist, you exist as the original potency. So here again another opulence, and it mentioned that you are God is Krishna is eternal, he is permanent. Bhagavad Brahma Samhita prayers Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayavanam Cha Vedeshu Dullabam Adullamatma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tam Ham Bhajami. So this verse also states the same thing, that Lord is everlasting, right? It's another in Bhagavad Gita 9.11, Lord says that avjananti mam muda manushim tanumashitam param bhavam jananto mam bhut maheshwaram. Who's deride me when I descend in the human form? They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord, as of all that be. So Lord is permanent and everything comes from him. Prabhupada gave the example of hydrogen and oxygen, like scientists find hydrogen and oxygen, but still after finding out that, okay, this water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen, can they make water? No, because these hydrogen and oxygen are not the source which can create anything, right? The original creator, original cause of everything is the Supreme Lord himself. So next verse. Again, I will just I think I will skip this one. It talks about how again it talks about the opulences, that how such Lord is so gigantic and he's unlimited, he's anant, how different from each and every pore, right? Different universes are coming. Okay, next verse. This talks about, O Lord, O supreme and unintelligent persons who thirst for sense enjoyment and who worship various demigods are no better than animals in the human form of life. Because of their animalistic propensities, they fail to worship your lordship, and instead they worship the insignificant demigods who are but small sparks of your glory. With the destruction of the entire universe, including the demigods, the benedictions received from the demigods also vanish. Just like the nobility when a king is no longer in power. So this verse, it talks about, like we know, it talks about that nar pashu is the word nar pashu, vishyo trisho nar pashav. So human being who is not interested in Krishna consciousness is basically condemned here as nar pashu. So just out of greed to gain quick material things for sense gratification, so people start worshipping the demigods, and they fail to understand that these demigods, even Lord Brahma is also not eternal. So how can they give some benedictions which can be permanent? So permanent protection can only and only be given by the Lord himself only. The last verse, I will skip the, okay. So, O Supreme Lord, if persons obsessed with material desires for sense gratification through material opulences worship you, who are the source of all knowledge and are transcendental to material qualities, they are not subject to material rebirth. Just as sterilized or fried seeds do not produce plants, living entities are subject to the repetition of birth. Do not produce plant. Living entities are subject to the repetition of birth and death because they are conditioned by material nature. But since you are transcendental, one who is inclined to associate with you in transcendence escapes the conditions of material nature. So in this verse, it talks about why bhakti yoga is most important of all. So in other kinds of yoga system, we see that the seed of sense gratification remains in a dormant state. It does not go away. It does remain in dormant state, and whenever there is a favorable conditions is received, that seed has the tendency and it can sprout any time. It does not go away. However, in case of bhakti yoga, the seed of sense gratification is destroyed completely. In the verse, it says karambha bijani, which means like sterilized or fried seeds, which cannot produce again. So the seed of this sense gratification is destroyed completely by bhakti practices, and the heart gets purified completely because it has received the highest and permanent pleasure. So we are the parts and parcels of the Lord, and we can never find happiness by any other means. But we are so unfortunate that we have forgotten this eternal relationship with Krishna, and we keep making unnecessary endeavors for insignificant material things here and there, which are very, very temporary in nature. So Krishna is means Krishna means all attractive. So once the heart and mind it gets attracted to Krishna, it will not hanker for insignificant material pleasures, which are anyways temporary in nature. So therefore, bhakti yogis can free themselves from the repeated cycle of birth and death and eventually go back to Godhead. So there is no pre-qualification needed to start the devotional service. This bhakti yoga, Krishna is anyways always waiting to shower his mercy on all his children. If one is not free from all sinful reactions, simply by the process of surrendering to Sri Krishna, he is automatically freed. Just by getting a glimpse, even by just by the chanting his name, his people get free from the clutches of Maya. Like in the Kali Yuga, anyways, it says like Hare Nam, Hare Nam eva kevalam kalau nasti eva nasti eva nasti eva gatiranyatha. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 18.66, Sarvdharman Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshishyami Ma Shucha. So Krishna himself is telling, just surrender to me. Don't worry about anything else. I think with that I will end the presentation here. Thank you, and please forgive me if I made or misspoke anything or made any mistakes. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji, that was a fantastic presentation. You beautifully narrated the pastime of King Chitraketu and how he got transformed and he started worshipping when he went through the material suffering. And then you very nicely went through each of the verses and the key points of it. Very beautiful, Mataji. I know we are late, but the 2 points that just struck to me when you said about cooking prasadam, we think we are doing things, but actually everything is given by Krishna, and we act like we are doing a favor, we are doing so much, but actually it's all Krishna. And the desires, right? As long as we keep having the desires, the sense gratification, we can never cross this material world. You nicely connected with the stories, and I think you also said a doha. It was very nice, and all the 6 principles of which is favorable for devotional service. You beautifully covered. Thank you so much, Mataji. That was a wonderful presentation. With that, we conclude the BhagavatSanga program today, devotees. Thank you all for joining. We'll see you all next week with another devotee presenting. Hare Krishna.